Have we had any gotcha moments on here?
It's happened to me 3 times already in this show. I've been got.
Is it all of us? Is it mostly men?
Yeah, it's mostly men.
Okay. Did you just fart? Welcome to the Jason Hedrick Show. I just learned from Kurt that this was show 10, and we've taken quite a long pause. Any ideas why?
Procrastination.
That's a good reason. Any other reasons?
Life.
Why?
Busy at
You guys are
work.
bringing me down.
Lack of hosts. Co-hosts. Guest hosts.
Yes. With the host
Guests.
is always the host is the most available person always.
I'm going to blame Trump.
We'll get
Just,
there.
yeah.
We'll get
I'm
there.
sorry.
Our guest tonight is Gary Hunt. I worked with you at the Sheriff's Department. That's how we know each other. I was there. I started back there in '97. So over 20 years ago is when I first met you. We don't really know each other outside of that, but I'm going to tell you why I reached out to you, because you're very religious, so that's always a good thing to talk about. And even though we haven't talked about this, I'm pretty sure you lean more towards supporting Trump and the Republicans than against. So those are two good things for me.
Well, I would say that first of all, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. And when you told me you do your podcast and you try and get somebody with a different take on things than you do, then that made it very interesting to me. And I will say that outside of work we don't know each other well. We've done a little battle on Facebook here and there, or some good discussions.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't even say it's a battle. I really enjoy. First back to the show. I think every step of the way, minus maybe a couple times where we just went a different route, I've always tried to bring in people from the other side. That's kind of been the theme of it, and the real message. And you know, this is perfect. I mean, here you are, a devoutly religious person, very active in your church, married. Kids, grandkids,
Yep.
Yes.
You're
stayed at
doing
your
the
job.
too much.
yeah. Stayed at your job forever. Support Trump. I mean, you are the antithesis of me. I mean, I'm the exact opposite of all that. But that's the beauty of it, because man, we still just get along.
Yeah.
You know, I still like you.
Yeah.
I don't dismiss what you say. Like, it means something to me. Because I know that you thought about these things. I know some of these things are deeply held convictions of yours that you live your life by. So that's it means more to me to have you than somebody that just comes in here and is putting on the show, or just saying what they think they should say, or just doing that. Like, I mean, I know you're living this. Like, you're walking the walk. So that means a lot to me.
That. And I heard your friend Kurt here say that you wear your heart on your sleeve. Is that what you said? Yeah.
You've got a heart on?
No, he wears his heart on his sleeve.
Excuse me.
Yeah, and you're very honest, and obviously you think about maybe not. Maybe you wear your heart on your sleeve, so sometimes it just comes out of the mouth. I'm not sure, but you definitely tell it the way that you see it. That's for sure, and I always appreciate that.
All right, Major, what have you been up to?
A lot.
Let's get into water polo.
Yeah?
How'd you guys do?
We won
Now,
league
first of all,
for
wait a second.
Yeah.
This was a rebuilding year, right?
Yes. Reloading year.
Reloading.
Yeah.
You came off a string of going to the finals a bunch of times?
Every time.
Every time?
Yeah.
Since you've been coaching, you've gone to the Valley Finals?
Well, I haven't made the Valley I've gone to the Valley playoffs.
Every time?
Yes.
But you've gone to the finals a bunch?
Yes. In Division 2, and then the last 3 years have been Division 1.
Right. And you've won it once or no?
We've won the Division 2 championship once.
Right. And now you're playing even the big boys.
Yeah.
So this was a reloading year.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so how'd you do?
We won league. That was our goal. There was some games we started 2 and 3 sophomores, and they were impressive. They worked hard and gave everything, and we ended up winning our 8th league, which I tell them, I'm very impressed with them. Like a good bunch of kids.
Yeah. Good job.
Thank
Good
you.
job, man.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nope, not yet.
You still get sales from your book?
One or two a month. We're at the point on Amazon. I give away more than I sell, rightfully so.
I'm buying one tonight.
I'm giving you one.
No, I'm buying
Amsterdam
one.
Acid
Yeah, Amsterdam Acid available on Amazon.
and freelance stories on Facebook.
Yes,
that are
when I need
quite
attention.
Yes, that's why we're all there, right?
Show and tell was always my favorite thing in school.
Okay, we're gonna focus in on Gary. So, Trump just kind of comes up with things, but I would like to maybe push him back a little bit further. Like I said, he'll probably get in the mix of things just because he's our president, and that's a lot of things we talk about. But the first thing I really want to hone in on is the religious aspect. So, you're a Catholic, correct?
I'm a Catholic.
And you just, well, you tell me the word. I don't want to say promoted, but
Ordained.
ordained. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ordained too.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yes. What's mine? Universal Life. It was super easy. It was like 5 minutes to do. But
Awesome.
I could do it.
Congratulations.
Yes, I think.
I have a doctorate from them.
Do you?
Is
$30.
everybody,
How much did that cost?
$30.
is everybody at this table ordained? Are you ordained?
I'm a doctor. I just said.
He does weddings. He does
I'm
weddings.
not everybody at this
I
table.
do weddings.
Yeah, yeah, you do. You recently have done one. Gary, have you done
Are you
one?
ordained?
Not any religious sect, but
Are you Universal Life?
yeah, well,
You-
something similar.
Usually everybody's Universal Life, but they're not.
Right.
When they're in our spot. Anyway, back to this guy. So you were ordained to a deacon.
Yes,
So
correct.
go into that a little bit. Tell us about that.
Okay. So, deacons in the Catholic Church have a history. They were around for the first 500 years, permanent deacons, people who didn't become priests. After 500 years, the Pope said, you know what, from now on, no more permanent deacons. It's just going to be something you do on the way up the chain. So that's the way it stayed until the 1960s. In the 1960s, when the Church had Vatican II, they reinstated the permanent diaconate. So now people like me, married with grandkids, can be a deacon, and I'm deacon is comes from the Greek word for slave or servant. So I'm kind of a slave or a servant in theory, but really, what it comes down to is I'm a preacher.
All right.
I do preach sermons. I help out teaching classes at the church. I do weddings like you guys do, and help out with funerals and baptisms and things like that. Whatever they need.
And you are still working at the Sheriff's Department. You're a lieutenant there,
I am.
and you're getting close to retiring.
I am.
Congrats on that.
Thanks.
Do you ever have any conflicts with the job you do in your religion, or is that just totally squared away?
It is. I've never had a conflict between my job and religion. I have. I'm the internal affairs lieutenant right now. That's one of the two units that I'm in charge of, and at our department, I think we do a pretty good job of. Currently, we do a pretty good job of keeping everything on the up and up and trying to make sure that we're cleaning our own house. When our messes are made, that we clean it up
Right.
and be moral. So I have no conflicts with that. Yeah.
Any things in life in general that, well, like this new pope, what's the pope now?
Pope Francis.
And he has, I would say, kind of been more to the left. Is that a good term? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, we can use that term left.
Yeah, I hear you. And yeah, it wasn't a perfect term, but
Sure.
and do you ever find yourself in conflict with the pope, or can you not be?
No, I can be in conflict with the Pope. I won't bore you too much with the details of it. But I don't know that I'm necessarily in conflict with the Pope on a lot. I don't know how much
So-
you want to get into.
Well, yeah. Well, so he'll do some things. You can give better examples than I can, but he'll come out and make some claims that he makes, and then they kind of seem political to people,
Mm-hmm.
and then even Catholic people will not totally be on board with him and be square with him.
Right.
That's a weird observation for me.
Yeah. Now well, first of all, I like Pope Francis. I support Pope Francis. His first document that he put out, it was like a 60-page book. I read it. I went through it like 2 or 3 times. I highlighted stuff. I love Pope Francis. There are some things that I would word differently than Pope Francis does, but one of the things you gotta love about Pope Francis is, like you, he tells it the way he sees it, and he doesn't mince words. He says what's on his mind, and I think he's done a good job. I think that part of it is strategy on the Pope's part. He says, look, why are we battling society on these things like sexual issues when our church is in agreement with much of society on helping the poor, on protecting the environment, and doing these other issues. And I'm for protecting the environment. I live in the valley.
Right.
My dad was born here. He used to be able to see the mountains
Right.
every day. So yeah.
Right.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Do as a Catholic, and then even holding the positions you hold, what kind of latitude do you have to just disagree with the Pope?
So, okay, now I'll bore you with a little bit
Yeah,
of the
that's all right.
details.
I'm asking.
So, in the church, there are different levels that you're required to believe. So, the top of the chain is what we call dogmas. And dogmas, you're required to believe if you're going to call yourself Catholic. You could still call yourself Catholic, but if you don't follow the dogmas, then the church would not consider you Catholic. So, those are the highest requirement. And one of the lowest requirements might be if you have a priest or a pastor at the church who is preaching at a homily. You're free to disagree with a lot of it, but you have to give the due respect and consideration and take it into account. And then there's levels in between. Certainly when they get together, when the church leaders get together in a council like Vatican II back in the 60s, and they made certain rulings on things, some of those things were called, like there's a dogmatic constitution on the church, so that's dogmatic. You kind of have to follow that. Then they have made other ones of lesser degrees, which you have to give a lot of respect to, and you should try and follow, unless if your own conscience leads you to believe that, I think that this is a bad interpretation or something. You can disagree.
So let's get specifically to the Pope. Could he say something that he says this is the way it is, and then you just say no, we're not doing that? I mean, can you do that, or not really?
Yes. So the only thing that the church considers that the Pope has full say-so on are matters of faith and morals. So if the Pope says that the sky is green and it's not blue, certainly free to say, I do disagree with you, Pope. And even if he, so most of what the Pope says is not dogmatic. So to a degree, you have a latitude. Now, I'm a deacon of the church, so I don't have to, but I will, and it's my obligation to present kind of the church's side of things. I won't lie to cover up for anything or anything like that, but in any event, you're free to disagree with most of what the Pope says. When he's, giving a speech he's in front of people and he's teaching the church, you have to give it due respect. You have to follow your conscience, but you can disagree with most of what he says and certainly still be considered a Catholic. Yeah.
The only thing, we'll stop right here. I'm pretty sure you're aware. I mean, I'm not religious.
Correct.
I mean, and you know that.
I heard you experimenting with Buddhism. A little bit.
Yeah, I don't say. I mean, I would say it's like. I mean, I think I think I practice it whether I know I'm practicing or not. Because I just think it's the way I see life. But at the same time, and I think this is where things aren't so black and white, and people want them to be. Like, to me, there could be no better person that people can follow than Jesus Christ. Like if people really believed what they say they believe, I think we would be in a lot better place. Not to say it doesn't have its problems and what doesn't, but now when you say like there's things that you have to believe, from an outsider looking in, it's hard for me to really believe that the vast majority of people truly believe it. I know they say they do. Now I can look at you and I have no doubts because you're walking the walk. And dude, I don't mean that means you're perfect. You're a dude, right?
Certainly.
Right. Yeah, I get you. So my expectations aren't that you're perfect. No way. But you really, really believe it, and those are instruction manuals from God, how to live your life and how to get through this time that we're here, and you're following the best you can, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, that's not what I see most religious people do. They just give it lip service to me.
You wouldn't have saw it in King David.
Well,
right?
King David had his issues.
And he was his favorite.
But I would
And
say
I behaved better than King David, so barely.
Yeah. King David had his, he had his moment in the sun and he had his moment in the darkness, and I think that all of us do that. And I would agree with you, Jason. I wholeheartedly say that if we would follow Jesus Christ, the world would be better off.
Right.
And none of us are going to do it perfectly, including Moses, who killed somebody, including King David, who cheated on somebody. And there's more big names in the Bible who have done really human, really bad things, who are still looked upon favorably in the Bible.
Martin Luther King Jr. liked his women.
Yes, the
I love that man, but
Yeah,
it's amazing how hard it is to be a man.
That we're going to be perfect. I mean, whatever your beliefs are, I mean, that's silly. That'd be insane to think that. And even if you believe, like you're trying to follow a person that you believe was perfect, I mean, there's no way you're going to be perfect. I mean, that's so. Everybody's going to. To me, you can have your things in the closet and your dark things. I mean, it's the totality, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. It's the totality of a person.
Yeah, and I would say, talking on the issue of religion, that you hit the nail right on the head. So part of the reason that I'm Catholic today and not atheist, because if I thought atheism was true, I would be atheist. And if I thought Buddhism was true, I'd be Buddhist, is because the proof is in the pudding, as they say. And, in the Jewish scriptures, which were written hundreds, some of them maybe 1,000 years before Christ, it kept coming up. I'm going to send you a great leader. I'm going to send you somebody, and he's going to be a Jew, and he's going to be a light to all the nations, and everybody can see this light. And I think that's what happened. I think that this great leader came to show us the way that we should act, and the way that we should behave. It then went out to all the nations, and there are 2 billion people who call themselves Christians. Probably, maybe not the majority, doing an excellent job of following Jesus, and myself included. But I think that is the way, and that's what, God didn't say that the world is going to be perfect, but He's going to say, I'm going to send you a light and somebody to follow.
To me, atheism is a confusing term. People can make out of it what they want. To me, it's just like, you're a theist. You have a relationship with the deity. You interact with it. It interacts in your life. I'm not that. I mean, that's what the atheist is. It's just, I am not that. But it really makes no claim on what I am. So I'm not out saying that you're wrong. I'm not out saying I know that what you believe is not true. You see, and I think when people hear atheists, like, that's just, I don't think what you think is right. I'm just not where you are. But I mean, I'm open. And I think there's some divine things about a man that lived 2,000 years ago that taught us love every step of the way to solve every single problem. And here we are 2,000 years later, and we still can't do it. Like, he obviously was millennium ahead of his time, right? I mean, that's pretty amazing to me. I mean, that's a divine, but without even the magical, mystical things, I'm just saying, just that idea alone. And that's the part that I don't really see people. I don't see people approaching every problem and every solution with love at all. I mean, I think every human part about them, their race, their gender, their political affiliation, everything is affecting how they're solving problems. But it's not love. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to infer that you're an atheist.
No. There's no problem with that. I just wanted to clear up. So,
okay.
Just because if there's people that like from your audience that is hearing this for the first time, we've done this before on this show. Like, I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, you're 10 as far as believing, right? I'm probably a 2. Like, I'm not a 0 or a 1. Major's always described himself as a 5. Mage? Still think that?
On what, as far as Christianity or the?
Yeah, let's hone in on that, since that's doing Gary's thing.
Yeah, probably 4 Christianity, 7 on there is something.
So here's the questions. So on your scale, I mean, it's pretty much 10 or nothing when it comes to belief, right?
I wouldn't say, I'm not sure that a 10 would be fair. Maybe I'm a 9. Maybe I'm a 9.5 or maybe a 9.5.
I've never heard anybody ever tell me that. That's religious. So I'm
I
just
could
telling
be
you,
wrong.
awesome.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
but
No,
I mean,
no, I
no,
could be
but
wrong.
but you
That's
just,
all.
but you're just saying, yours is 100% as you can be, but just that you're a human being, you still leave a little bit of margin for who knows. Is that like?
Yeah, I think that if I say I believe in something, it doesn't mean that I know it. If I say I believe in something, it doesn't mean that I know it. It means that I'm not sure that this is what I think.
But like one of the I'm telling you are the first religious person, especially Christian person. Like if I say on a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you certain? I've never heard anybody. I didn't think that they could say anything but 10.
No, I want to follow the truth. I'm only in this for one reason, and that's to follow the truth. And if it was open, my eyes were open that this is a bunch of garbage, I wouldn't want anything to do with
Right,
it.
and even though you don't believe that, you still whatever, and it's kind of irrelevant whether it's 9.99 or 9.75 or 9.25. I mean, you still just have a little bit of leeway there for okay. I mean, how could I be 100% certain of anything?
I would say that's fair, and I would say that only a fool would say that I 100% know this.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
yes.
I try and actually, I know it's hard to do because we have our preconceived notions and the way that our mind thinks in certain ways, but I do try to leave my ears open to hear other people on any issue, and including, my biggest and my most favorite right now, which is my religion. Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, it seems like a good time. We took a short break. Usually the listener doesn't know unless I bring it up. But when you stepped away, Garrett, Kurt's just like, man, he goes, I don't mean this bad at all. He's all, but how can a guy like this be a Trump guy? That's what Kurt said. So
I didn't mean anything bad by
No,
it.
I
but
know.
I'm
just-
almost offended by the term Trump guy, but that's all right.
So I mean, what a great time to get into that, especially since we just talked about like your morals and the things that you believe. Like, so here's Kurt, just your regular dude that's sitting here watching it, not even really chiming in, just listening to the conversation. Like, he's sitting here thinking, I know he didn't say this to me. I just know because we've had enough guests. Like, you can chime in if I get any of this
Okay.
wrong. All right.
Right.
Like, you didn't know what our guest was tonight.
Correct.
You had no idea.
Correct.
Sometimes I let you know ahead of time.
Right.
And I know that when I tell you I got this Trump guy and he thinks this and he thinks this, you kind of get fired up.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, right? So I didn't tell you what was going on tonight, right?
Right.
So you're just learning, kind of.
Well, the
that he's
thing-
go ahead.
Let me just. I mean, I knew, or I hated Trump. I really dislike. I don't hate, but I really dislike like the rich white man. Period.
Why you hate being white?
Just because of no. I'm
Haven't you
serious.
seen Mississippi Burning?
So
Let's not get into my ex-wife and all that.
Hedrick's
but,
a white lover.
but you.
No, but
Go ahead.
let me finish.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Howard Stern, right? When I first heard Trump on Howard Stern, I was like, man, what the hell is this guy? And it was disgust,
So the people that follow him, you kind of like they own that too in your mind.
Well,
Like if they support him and have
if
voted
they
for him,
support
and they're
him
gonna
after
vote for him
he's,
again.
about the pussy grabbing and
Right. But just everything we
Yeah.
know about him and
Right.
everything that's happened. And yes,
I do
say
not
that
like his
stuff more than
conduct.
anybody. Right. So if anybody still supports him and they're going to support him again, like that's hard for you. Like it's hard for you to look at this guy who you know is this good
Yeah.
dude. Like you know that. Like
Right.
that's hard for you.
right.
Right. Okay. So what do you like? You go, Garrett. Like knowing that, like, go ahead. You have to have dealt with that a little bit, right?
Yeah, let me throw a little monkey wrench into the works. So, as a member of the clergy, we have a canon law, which is kind of a rule we got to follow if we want to continue to be active clergy, and that is that we can't publicly support
Right.
any person or any party. So that's the monkey wrench in the works. We can support issues. We can
Unless
talk
you wanna
about
pay
issues.
tax.
Who booked this guy?
So, but I will certainly be honest with you in saying this, a few things about me being a Trump guy, and like I said, I'm almost offended at the church. So,
apologize.
before I was ordained a deacon, and the issue of Trump came up, I've known about Trump since the 1980s. I remember Trump back in those days, and I've never been a fan of Trump's. I've never been a fan of Trump's. I've always he's very showy and very, I don't know. He's just a guy that I don't like, and by the time I got to vote, he was the only Republican still on my ticket because I was registered Republican at the time, and so I mean there were other choices on there, I suppose, but he was the only one who could still make it, and I had to stand there and really ask myself, Gary, are you really going to cast this vote? Because you do not like this guy,
Right.
and so that's why I almost get offended when you call me a Trump guy, because I think when you try and pressure somebody into a corner.
But if you voted
lose
for
room
him,
the
I mean,
monitor.
aren't you a Trump guy? I mean, just in that little simple yes or no. I get you. It's more complicated than that, and you're here to explain that, and that's why you're here. But it's either you did get him in this position that he's in and holds the president, or you tried not to. So at one level, you're either a Trump guy or you're not. It's just, and then again,
I would say this: I was either a Trump guy or a Hillary guy.
right. You had to vote for one of those two. But
Right.
if you did, I mean, whichever one you
And
voted
that's
for,
the
you
option
were
I
that
took.
one at that. But again, and if it comes down to, I mean, he's going to be the only Republican again. I mean, that's for sure.
Well, he was. I would also say this: that the reason I was hesitant in asking myself, "Am I really going to vote for this guy?" Because, in my estimation, Trump is a guy that, number one, I can't trust, and number two, I don't know, but I think he has potential to do things that are really bad, and that's why I really hesitated and really had to ask myself, "Are you going to do this?" Because I wasn't sure if it was the right decision or not. The right decision could have been Hillary. The right decision could have been Trump, because those were my only two choices.
So
in
you
the final.
just, out of what you think he's capable of, you think she was more capable of that?
Well, it's a complex issue. Voting for a president, there's a lot of moving parts there,
I agree.
and so it.
But what about, so I get you that it was going to be one of those two, right?
Mhm.
And if you do a write-in, if you do a Gary Johnson or something like that, you're not voting for one of the two that is viable. I
Right.
so understand that, but if you really think both of those are bad people, and not even just politics, but just people, you really question their morals. Isn't it better to vote for somebody else than one of those two?
Well, I can give you one clear reason why I would rather have supported, or not supported, because I don't think that's the right word, but why I had those two choices then. At that time, I chose Trump. And number one reason is from a guy with my perspective. I am anti-abortion. I think that it's killing people, and when you think that people are supporting the killing of millions of 50 million innocent babies since 1972, that's like casting a vote for Hitler, because there are factories where these things happen, where people are killed by chemicals and knives and other instruments. So from that perspective alone, how do I vote for Hillary?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, because I think we're probably
Based
gonna
on
ask
that,
the same thing.
I'm curious. No, we won't. Do you believe the souls of aborted babies go to heaven?
Do I believe the souls of aborted babies go to heaven? I'm not sure. Go ahead, explain your point.
I don't have one. I often
Okay.
think of that. I like
Well, then
if
it doesn't matter, right?
Well, I mean, there is
Well, why would it
un-Catholic.
matter? Why would it matter?
Well, because if they do go to heaven, if heaven's there and it's as good as it's described, I wish I would have been aborted. Because I'm not quite sure I'm going there now. But it is one of those things I think about. Like, if you genuinely
So
believe that
Well,
you pass
certainly
go,
don't think that humanity shouldn't exist. Do you think that would be better that none of us were here on this earth?
we're getting there.
No, but because I it's a great question. You're just saying specifically for you. I get Gary's point. Like, if we abort everything, then how do we go on?
But we won't abort everything.
Yeah, but I get that. But you're just saying specifically for you. If heaven is exactly the way it's supposed to be and described, Like that was instant. You're there. You didn't have to deal with any of this. Even all the good times you've
It's
had
a
on
hell of a
there, and
loophole.
we try to have is you have as many good times or try to. I know it's all fake and it's shallow and you're broken.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying, but like you're living life, right? And you're experiencing some of the best times you can in life. But still, heaven's exponentially a gazillion times better than that, right? So why not take the fast pass, right?
Right.
That's your point. I mean, not to be morbid and not to say that we can't abort everybody, but you're just saying your question, and I've never heard you ask this before, but your question is, if they do get aborted, like, isn't that better for them? But then we're sitting here fighting about it still, kind of.
Yeah, as a humanist, or right? Like, if I'm just curious what people believe in that. If you do believe they go straight to heaven, I think it's kind of like why I get when I question when Jesus raised Lazarus.
Mm-hmm.
No one ever asked him, "Hey, did you want to come back?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if he was there, like it's like, dude, I thought you were my friend. Like, well, I had to prove a point to these people, you know. But none of that's explained. Everyone's relieved that he came back, and I think that way. I think, well, maybe he didn't want to come back,
Right.
but it's glorious that he came back. And these are just weird thoughts I have. So with the babies and the
No, it's okay.
and the abortion thing, it's like if they go straight to heaven, they don't get a chance to they're as perfect as Christ.
And now that I see where you're going, I'll give you my answer. My answer is that.
Or you're hesitant.
No, I absolutely look at life as a gift. I definitely think it's a gift. Even with that, I've been through my crap, and I've had my problems in life. Life has not been perfect to me. I'm 53 years old, and anybody who makes it to be 53 years old has had some stuff to deal with. But I absolutely look at it as a gift, and I wouldn't want somebody to take it. And I look at it, take a look at football. Is football fun? Well, you get run over by somebody, or you run somebody over, you're hitting each other, you're getting hurt, people are getting seriously injured, some people die in it. But look at all the glory that's involved when you see them out there, catching that touchdown pass or making that sack, and the joys that come with it. So, and life is the same way. Life definitely has its downs and its things that are terrible, and times when you're miserable for long periods of time that you can't even bear. And then there's times when you're high-fiving each other and slam dunking it. And to be there, to be able to go through it all, that's a gift. That's just my thought on it, and why I would rather not be aborted.
I understand. Maybe if you were born in Mexico City, there'd be an argument.
No, I've lived on food stamps before, so I've been below the poverty line for years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you. Our producer's trying to tell
Go
us
ahead.
something.
I
It's
was
a
just gonna
great
tell you
time
when
for
10
Peck
minutes.
Pest Control. If
Okay,
you
that's
need
fine.
Peck Pest Control,
I can cut it down. I can cut
today's
it down.
Pest Control, tomorrow.
Okay. I want to get
Fucking
home
phone
back in
number.
on the
phone's already
the
ringing.
Trump side of things. Do you? You don't have to do this specifically with your beliefs, but just the way I look at it and the masses. Like, I see a lot of things that don't square with Christianity, and I'm not getting in Republican or Democrat. I mean, I'm not even going there. We can go there if we need to, but I'm just saying there's just things that aren't. I don't see how they could square with a person that believes in Christ, and it doesn't even have to be just be you, but do you see any of that? Like, do you see like, wow, these two things don't jive, or not really?
I see that politics in America in 2019 is an absolute mess. There's no parts of it that's good, and it's very difficult to make those choices. And you keep giving me the Trump label, but I voted for presidents as Democratic candidates for president and senator and more local races.
You thought that, I mean, at the time, and you did think he was probably a better choice than her.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, I don't mean it in any other way than that. So when I
Okay.
say a Trump guy, I'm not trying to give you all his baggage, because I know that's not you, and that's why you're here, because
Now, if I do have an
you are
audience
separate. But I'm
that-
saying, no, I get you, and I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to pin that on you at all. And like I said, I mean, we've had other Trump guests, and I think they are taking the Kool-Aid, and we've dealt with them as guests that are taking the Kool-Aid. I do not feel that way about you at all. So I don't want you to think that. But
Okay.
again, that's the interesting part to us.
Mhm.
I mean, you're coming at it from a different angle. It's
Mhm.
like you still felt that he was better, and I get it. I get it if we're doing Republican and Democrat, But because of your background, and I mean the morals, I know, not just a lot of people would be lip service. They would say if they had to rank things, it's Jesus and this and that, but not really. That's what I'm saying. God isn't really number one for most people. I know it's not, and it's them. They're number one, and then something else, and then maybe this. But for the people like you, that I really do believe that is number one. I mean, and you're doing that. Then that being number one for you would override the Republican and the Democrat stuff. It would just have to be on the morals of the person. So even though you knew what you thought he was capable of,
I wouldn't say it would just be on the morals. We have to take the morals into account. And in my estimation, neither Hillary nor Trump had good morals or a good moral character. So they have a position to fulfill in the government that people need. People are dependent on them to successfully do their jobs so that their lives are as optimal as they can be. And so if you have two people who I wouldn't say are equally have moral problems, but both of them have, in my estimation, huge moral problems, then you have to take a look at the other parts of the job that they're going to do, and who's going to do those other jobs, and you just make your best choice. The morals is almost taken out of the picture in that situation from a guy like me.
do you think most people out there that voted for Trump look at it the way you look at it, or do you think most of them are diehard Trump people?
Boy, you're asking me to speak for a lot of people.
No, and there's probably data out there we can look up. But I'm saying, what is do you, because you're walking the path you're walking, and talk to the people you talk to, like most of the people that I talk to that will tell you they voted for Trump, they don't separate. They just say basically like Mulvaney, deal with it. Like, yeah, people talk like that, and yeah, he's a businessman, yeah, he's successful. Like, you're going to great lengths to separate from that. Like, I so get your point. It's just like they're both incredibly flawed. I mean, I guess we could put it on a scale and whatever it comes out to, but then you're saying, then you throw in the rest of the recipe, which is they are Republican, they're going to have this system in place, and they're Democrats in this, so they're both flawed, but then here's the rest of the recipe. So that's kind of where you are. I'd say that's a pretty fair statement. Kurt, you look like you're leaning in over there.
Well, I was just going to say at least Hillary took a civics class. So
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think Trump ever did. I don't mean to be the what do you call it?
Yeah, I don't think he's here to defend.
Oh, you're him.
But I mean, but we're here trying to figure out how it still could be a better choice, knowing what we know. Like, because it's going to happen again.
I know.
In 2020.
I know why.
Go ahead. Yes.
I don't quite know how to explain it. I have. Obama and Hillary and the Democrats were very wary of calling things terrorism, on blaming things that were from the Muslim faith, and they
His
were
lack of
called
political correctness.
like weak for it, and
Right.
people really wanted that. People like us that don't live our life according to a doctrine don't want that. If you believe that doctrine, if you have faith in that, you want a president that's not afraid to say that stuff. That stuff incites and snowballs and creates a scenario which I believe the philosophies all know is coming, or the end of days, or the great battle, whatever it is. They want that person that stands up and says, Islam's bad, they cause this. Because if you really buy into it, and I don't mean that as a talking down way, if that's your train of thought, that's your hero. You don't care how he behaves. He's going to condemn the beheadings of the Christians. We're going to say, hey man, you choose to be a Christian, you go out in the world, that's your choice. You get beheaded, that's not, we could have warned you against that. We don't think that way. But if you are into that train of thought, you want that president that says, Islam beheads Christians, and
So-
we're going to do something about it. And so,
How much of that is his supporters, percentage-wise,
how much is what?
of that train of thought?
Well, A lot of them.
But I mean,
That's why they don't care of his behavior outside
on
of that.
issue, or just that mentality.
Overall mentality.
That mentality.
They don't like I brought up the King David thing. I've thought that for a while. Like he was considered God's favorite. And that guy did some great stuff and he did some crazy stuff, and to them it's the same thing. It doesn't, none of that matters. The pain, the porn star, all that. None of that matters as much as he's willing to stand up and say, we believe in God and Islam is screwing things up, and he becomes their champion.
So I get your point, and it's probably a lot of accurate things in there. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that is all true. Everything, I just stipulate that.
Yeah.
They don't think that this guy is a charlatan. I mean, they don't think that he's just given them
As much as most of they are.
Yeah, I get you, but I mean,
There's probably comfort in that.
Isn't it just so obvious that he would say anything? Like, he doesn't believe like that stuff that's getting them fired up. Like, he's only saying that because it polls well, or that's what he needs to say. He doesn't believe those things. He would say anything that he could. I get you. That,
No.
Everybody does
They
that.
believe he believes it.
Really?
Yeah.
They,
I hear what you're saying.
So they don't think he's a phony.
No.
Like, on any. Do you
No.
think he's a phony?
I think there's a scale of people. Well, do I think he's a phony? Yeah, I think he's funny about a lot of things.
Right.
I think he says things for political reasons regularly. Sometimes it's.
Do you think it's
to go
more
after
than
the left,
normal?
and sometimes it's to fire up his right.
But I mean, because you always say, well, they all lie. I mean, to me, this is just like we're at a whole nother level of phoniness. Like, does he seem more phony than? I'm just saying, it just seems like a whole different degree, and like we're not talking about. Like, people are acting like this is normal, like what Major said. Like, I think that's a lot of truth there. But at the same time, I mean, don't you just shake your head and say, "Wow, where are we right now? Like, what the heck's going on?" Or we're just, this is it. Like,
Well, my opinion is it's a complex issue, but I'll try and break it down quickly. Number one, I think that Trump. He is not a politician. He is different to begin with. For two reasons. Number one, because he's Trump. And number two, because he's not a politician. And number three, to take into account is that politics, as I said initially, is a disaster right now in America, in my estimation. There's so much of it that is reprehensible, and the fact that I'm not happy that we have somebody who, had his own reality show, and he's our president.
what about
Yeah.
if I know you can't answer this, but appease me. Who would God let into heaven first? Me, the person that has said I'm probably about a 2, but have told you my thoughts on Christianity. That I wish it was that way. I would be cool if that was all right. Like, I'm not against that. I wish people live like so. Who would God let into heaven first? Me, a guy that says I don't really believe in that. I don't follow those rules. Or a guy like Trump that says he follows those rules but doesn't.
Oh, you're both fucked.
But I mean, to me, like, he's way worse. 'Cause he's a con. Like, I'm not doing damage to your faith by being me.
Yeah.
He's doing damage to your faith by even getting the support of those people, by claiming to share the same things they care about when he doesn't. But I mean, that to me is using God's name in vain. If there's ever a 10 Commandment, I mean, he's breaking it right there. I mean, it's all vanity, right?
Well, fortunately, I don't get to decide. God was wise enough
Right.
to not put Barry in charge of who's going to make it to heaven and who's not. And ultimately, I think that the Bible, it makes it clear, and my faith teaches, and I believe that God is going to judge us by what He's given us and by what we have in front of us. So you know a certain amount of facts, and you weighed everything, and are you using your conscience to make your best decisions and to try and live your life right? I think that God takes all that into account. And I think He takes that into account when He judges Trump, and I think He takes that into account when He judges me as
Right.
well.
So yeah, and who knows? I mean, how could we? know what God's going to do. But then the perception by people. So let's just say, if we asked a poll, and they've pretty much done this, so I'm not even making this up, but I kind of winging it right now. If they asked a poll, who should be president? This guy, who might be completely qualified in every single aspect that we would all agree on, but he's completely atheist and doesn't believe in God. Or this guy, who is just a total mess morally, he's reprehensible, but he says he's Christian and he goes to church.
Mhm.
Like, from the again, we can't know what God knows, but like, just as a follower, again, like, the atheist isn't damaging, tarnishing the reputation of my religion, which is incredibly important to a religion. It's incredibly important how you're perceived. If you're doing right in the world, it's how you get followers. It's how you get people to convert, and ultimately that's your goal. Your goal is to get more people to heaven, not just the people that you know or your family. I mean, you want to spread that message. So I'm just saying, when people hook their wagon to this guy, that's the part that I think, wow, that just really conflicts to the religious part of it. Again, and we could still go right and left and Democrat, Republican, I get all that, but just that issue alone is really perplexing to me.
Well, certainly Hillary didn't. She claims she's a Christian. Right?
Yeah, I'm sure. She says
so
that. I would know if she
we
was,
had
I
a
guess.
choice between two people who both claim to be Christians, and one of them, I think Trump probably did more to put it out there that he's a Christian, but I certainly don't think that was one of his primary running points. I mean, he was running on
Why, you
immigration,
don't
he
think
was
he
running
picked
on
Mike
gun
Pence
rights.
simply because he
running
was a
on-
Christian?
What's that?
Mike Pence.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, that is
that was a
100%
big
his
part.
motivation, was because he was Christian. He was getting those people. I mean, he was the first guy out of the 16-person field. He wasn't liked. I mean, I don't want to say that's a harsh word, but I mean, he wasn't supported. He was ousted right away. I mean, the whole reason he picked Pence, and there's always a reason they picked the vice president.
Sure.
This is not.
And it's usually to get votes.
Yeah, it's absolutely not just Trump that did this. But what I'm honing in on what Trump did was, a lot of times they pick this guy to carry the state. That's usually what they do. This person will deliver this state to us. This guy delivered the Christian people to him.
Mhm.
That was what Mike Pence. And I'm saying, Christian people can't see that.
I think Christian people support Mike Pence, and I think that
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why he picked him, because
right.
he knew, like, most of the time when they pick the VP, it's to fill a void that person has,
Right.
A state or a demographic or whatever.
like Hillary did with
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it goes both ways for sure. They've done it since I've been alive, all of them. The void Trump was filling was the religious void.
I'll take your word on it. I don't have any evidence to disagree with it, and I did.
Yeah, and I don't even
study
know.
it.
I mean, do you see that differently? I mean, when you say you take my word on it, I mean, that doesn't seem obvious to you?
No,
That
I don't
was
know if
his-
there's other issues too. I don't know if
Right, I
Trump
hear
thought he
you.
could also deliver a state that he needed. I don't even know what state Pence comes from. That's what I'm part of my
Jeez.
study.
What is he? Wisconsin? Does anybody know? I think I'd know if I did a show like this. Major will know. Question, quiz. Mike Pence, what state's he from?
Wichita.
Is that a state?
It's a city in Kansas. I know he went to college there. I don't know where he's from.
You know what? I mean, if that's anything is right about that, I'll give you a little bit of credit. I
Thank you.
guess Wisconsin. I can't believe we don't know. Kurt's looking it up.
Well, Wisconsin was an important state this time.
Oh,
around.
there's no doubt.
And I don't know that he came from
the delivered in the state.
Indiana.
God, let's cut all that out. Okay, I'm gonna pivot from Trump here on this last segment, but that's not the sole reason you were here. And I know you've kind of pushed back on that you're a Trump guy for various reasons, for the position that you have, and you are a little conflicted on it. It's not simple for you, so you don't want to carry that mantle, and I understand that. But the what you bring, and we try to hone in on what our guests bring to the table, and it is your religion, and then your beliefs. So, like I said, everything will kind of run into Trump in our conversations, one way or the other, and it's like, how do you square those up? So, I'm going to switch from Trump if we can. So, if we can get him in this conversation, I'll be impressed. But the idea of free will. And it's fascinating from a scientific standpoint, but I always, I think this is what I think is weird to people about my views on religion. I think that science and religion jive a lot of the times. I think they're saying it from different sides of the world, an east and a west. Just the way the universe works. To me, the catch-all, if you are religious, we live in a time where religion and science seem to be at odds, like they're enemies of each other. To me, the catch-all, if I'm religious, is that's how God did it. I mean, on anything. You could say, hey, look what we just discovered today, this and this and this, and time this, and speed of light that, and the universe this, and that doesn't prove there's no God. That all of you could, the catch-all is, yep, he had to make it somehow, so that's how he made it. So it's weird to me that those two things are at odds. And one thing I've noticed about you, just from following your stuff, is you're pretty into that kind of stuff. Like you've gone and furthered your education, and you like having those conversations with people. They don't scare you. So just hit on why you think there is that divide between religion and science, and then how it is for you.
Yeah, well, I'll say this, that first of all, it's easier for me as a Catholic. So when Martin Luther kind of split the church, he split it on two ideas. One, the Bible alone, we don't need the church. And the other one is faith alone. Faith is all that's needed. And that's never been the stance of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has always been faith and reason. Pope John Paul II wrote an article that he sent out to the whole church called Faith and Reason. And despite Galileo, Catholics have a long tradition of not just faith and reason, but faith and science. So if you go back to the 300s, you got Augustine. Now, Augustine was a guy who never, and wrote that, he never took Genesis literally. He thought there were important lessons to learn, that it is the Word of God, but it wasn't to be taken literally. And he wrote that he didn't take it literally because the Jews didn't take it literally. So we don't have that conflict in the Catholic Church. There are definitely Catholics that did believe and that do believe today that we are to take Genesis literally. And the Church has never made a ruling to say this way or that.
Wait, now when you say Genesis, does that apply to the whole Bible, or you're literally just talking Genesis?
Well, that's what Augustine wrote about back in the 300s.
But can you dismiss part of it like that? I mean...
The Bible is a collection, in the Catholic world, it's a collection of 75 books. Maybe it's 72, but there's 66 in the Protestant Bible, there's a few more in the Catholic. And it's a collection, so there are stories, there are songs, there are poems, there are histories, there's the Gospels, there's the Book of Revelations, which is kind of a thing in itself, and there's letters. So it depends on what genre you're talking about. You got a lot of different genres in the Bible. Obviously, there are poems and songs. You don't take those things literally, but that doesn't mean they're not relaying an important message from God.
But, I mean, you do think there's, Christian people that are taking that stuff literally. Don't you see that?
Yeah.
That they do, that just because it's in the Bible, that they have to take it literally. They can't.
Yeah, there are certainly people that believe that, yeah.
Isn't that dangerous?
To take the book of Genesis literally?
No, to take anything like that literally. Or just that's the way things are without... to have an instruction manual that they believe is divine, that can't be fallible. Isn't that dangerous?
No, I believe that the Bible is infallible. And I believe that it's written by God. That it's not written by God, it's written by men, obviously. But it is fully inspired by God, and that it's infallible.
You think it's infallible? It's inspired by God.
Yes.
Man had his hand in it,
Yes.
and you still think it's infallible.
Yes.
You don't think man could have fouled it.
I think, well, maybe we're speaking with terms that don't necessarily mean the same thing. So you can have things happen in the Bible. Well, let me try and use Genesis, okay? So as the literal example, that was it written, if you looked at Genesis and you wanted to look at Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2, there's a problem there. And the problem is that in Genesis chapter 1, first God creates the earth, first he creates the lightness and the dark, the sun and the moon, and then he makes the animals, and he makes the fish and the birds, and the last thing he makes is man. And then if you look at Genesis chapter 2, you look at it and you say, oh, God made the earth, and then he made man out of clay, and then he made the animals, and he brought them to Adam, and Adam named all the animals, and then he said none of these are sufficient, so he took a rib out of Eve, and he created a woman. Well, one of them says the animals were created first and then men, and then the other one says men are created first and then the animals. So there's a problem there. And the problem is that men wrote this, and that this isn't really inspired by God. But you have to look at what's the lesson teaching, what's Genesis chapter 1 teaching us, and what's Genesis chapter 2 teaching us. And if you look at it in that way, there's no conflict.
I get that, but there could be a conflict between what Jesus preached and what was in there about how to treat your wife, or if you work on a Sunday, you're supposed to be put to death.
Mm-hmm.
Like, couldn't some of those have been man's words put in to help control?
Hey, don't look at my neighbor. I don't like how you're looking at my wife. Like that?
Kind of, yeah. I see what you're saying. Like
Ten Commandments.
There's,
Hey, I don't like
it's like
the way
law, the
John's
letter of
looking
law,
at
the
my wife. We better make
spirit
that
of law.
Well, Paul is actually the one who wrote that said that, you wives obey your husbands. And many people today find that offensive. But Paul also wrote that this is an instruction, not on that part, but on different parts. He's read, this is an instruction for me. I don't mean it to be as from God. This is my recommendation. So there you have something that is Paul's. He says that it's a recommendation. He's saying that it's not, that this isn't something that he's putting down as a law from God. This is something that he's just saying is his opinion. So does it have man's opinion in it? Yes. Is that the way God wanted it? I would say yes. Do we have something important to learn from that part that Paul taught us? I would say yes. We got something important to learn there. And there are, you have to look at them. I think you have to look at all the scriptures, including the letters, including the ancient history. You have to look at how history was being written at the time and how letters are being written at the time. And you have to look at the culture that it's coming from. And you have to look at the language they speak and the barriers about being translated from what they probably spoke at the time, which is Aramaic, turning it into Greek when it was written in the New Testament, and then translating that into English. So it's a complex issue. It's a complex book. It's been written over thousands of years.
Besides translation, do you think like it was edited by man?
It certainly was edited by man. A man decided what was going to be in the Bible and what wasn't going to be in the Bible. Sure.
Okay, so that makes better sense to me as for like the slavery portion.
Go ahead. Yeah.
That just bugs me. I mean.
Yeah. No. I get it.
I believe that if God really, wrote the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
He would put something in. He wouldn't say, treat your slaves. I don't know the quote, but
There just wouldn't be instructions.
It would have said end slavery.
it would say there should be no slaves.
Thou shalt not own a man.
Right. Instead of give instructions.
I have a big hang up on that.
Yeah, I can see, and that's good. And
What about shrimp? Do you like shrimp?
Hold on, Peck has a question.
Is that a trick question?
Do queers go to hell, Brian? Excuse us, those you
go
listening
ahead.
at home.
Just how you square up the parts
Okay.
that he's talking about.
So how do I square up slavery?
What is it, Leviticus? Or was it... I can't remember.
Well,
That's
Whoppers
okay.
come from
I
there.
won't remember either. I
Okay.
won't remember either. But I can tell you my opinion on the issue, and that is this. I believe that in certain ways, God is not. So let's say that there's this. I don't want to have to go back too deep. Let me try and answer it simply. For simplicity's sake, let's say that God's a person, in the sense that God has an intelligence and he has a will and he has a mind and he created everything out of nothing because he's a genius, to make it simple. And so God in our lives, I feel like that I'm a person and he starts with me where I am, and I say, okay, God, you know what, I think you got something right here, and I think maybe I better pay attention to what you have to say. Okay, Gary, well, here's some things we've got to do. We've got to start getting some stuff in order. I want you to start working on it. Okay, God, I'll do that. He starts with me where I am, and he goes forward. So the Bible says, if you believe the Jews and the Christians, they call Abraham the father of the Jews, and they believe that God came to Abraham and formed a covenant with him and promised him that his offspring were going to become a great country, and that they were going to have an influence on the rest of the world, and that their country was going to bring blessing to the rest of the world. So God kind of says that has an agreement now, not with a person like me, but with Abraham, and he says, I'm going to make your people into a country, but we're going to start where you at. Where are you at, Abraham? We have concubines, we have slaves, we have physical abuse, we have all these issues. And so God says, okay, let's start where you're at. I'm going to lay down some laws for you. Here's some laws. So he gives them some laws. What the earliest Christians did, if you look back in the historical writings of the first 3 centuries, and even Paul wrote about this, that you have to look at the Old Testament through the eyes of the New Testament. So the Old Testament is always looking forward to this forward time when this Messiah was going to come and the blessings were going to come to the rest of the world. And you can't understand fully the Old Testament and those strange things the prophets said unless you look back and say, here's the Messiah, and the Messiah is kind of the interpreter, and the Messiah is kind of the perfection of all this. And so society, the Jewish people of the society is coming along, and they have slaves. So God says, okay, you have slaves, we're going to lay some rules. You can't just do whatever you want with them. Here's the rules when you can and when you can't. Okay, Moses says, you guys have a problem with divorce. You're just leaving your wives and nobody even knows if you're still married or not. You got to write a bill for divorce now. And then Jesus comes along and he shows you the ultimate way. So he's at the point where, okay, follow me, follow what I'm teaching. So when the earliest Christians wrote about these things, they say we have to take into light the killing they did, the massacring of other races or nations. We have to see that through the eyes of Christ. So when they would see the Jewish people, for instance, being told by God to slaughter all the people, they say, in light of Christ, we see that we have to slaughter all of our enemies. Who are our enemies? Are they each other? No. But what they are, our enemies are our problems that we have. And we need to slaughter those problems and wipe those out. So they saw the Old Testament in light of the New Testament.
Okay.
We started this segment on free will, and we never touched on free will.
All right, let's sit in.
No, but I don't even think we're going to have time to get to that because I know how we are. But I think it's a great time to end it because I think it brings it full circle. Really, why I wanted you as a guest, because you're sitting down with 3 people that, at best, one gives himself a 4 on the scale of being Christian, and you also voted for Trump, and I think you're doing good work for your cause, man. I mean that. You're delivering a message like Kurt on the break. I'm not picking on Kurt, but he's a great sample of a lot of people, say, that are going to listen to this from my side of things, and it's easy. Like the last guest we had on it would be easy for them to put him in a category and say, yeah, he's a Trump guy, right? And that's why you are important to me, because I think more people that lean more to the left need to see that you're a good dude, that you're a good dude, and I think your audience that happens to listen to that needs to see the same thing, that we're not all this caricature of what they think we are either. That we're trying to reach out, and that's where we got to find the common ground. But I think you're doing good work, and again, I'm not religious, but I think, it makes me proud that that there are people that do it the way you do it. It makes me feel good about people that it's not hypocrisy. It's just genuine. So thanks for coming on, man.
Well, thanks. Number 1, you're too kind, and number 2, I think that we all share one thing in common, and that is we're all here. We're all sharing from the heart. We're all sharing what we believe, and I think that I kind of stand alone in one regard, but I don't stand alone in that. I appreciate you guys and your honesty and willingness to talk to me.
Yeah, I think you're a good sample that we don't get enough of. I think we get the other sample and we find out that other sample and we see it and it's in our face. And you have to look a little deeper that there's a lot of you out there too, you know. And again, I'm not saying you're carrying the mantle for Trump, but it's not all one component. It's not just like the 25, 35, 40% of people that are just straight Trump people. There's you that floats somewhere in the middle, you know, and we need to see that, you know, because I think most of us are in the middle. Even if, you know, there's a Hillary vote and a Trump vote, sure, the whole spectrum, if you take it out to each side, is really, really extreme. But most of us are right there. But it was tough both ways. You know, I mean, if you didn't struggle with that, whoever you were, then, you know, you're not really in the middle. Because that was difficult if you're in the middle. Anyway, man, hopefully we'll do one of these not too long from now.
Next year?
Well, next year seems reasonable. So, Gary, thanks so much, man. Congrats, everybody.